Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair. I think my task has been made much easier when, during the opening remarks, the Honorable Chair made a remark that India and Myanmar have huge hydropower potential. They have huge potential for electricity cooperation, and he hopes that a better attitude, a change in governmental attitude, and policy change can lead in further cooperation among the two countries. So thank you, Chair, for the useful insight. But let me begin my presentation with a bit of pessimism here. A project of multilateral nature or of bilateral nature can be implemented, can be realized if there is political will. You have a supply, you have essential demand, and you may have the essential investments coming in. But if the necessary political will among the countries is not present, if it's absent, then it essentially leads to non-cooperation. So we have seen this pattern emerging in South Asia and Southeast Asia, where because of a lack of political will, the countries have not been able to integrate their economies. Especially in case of energy projects, if you look at the modalities of energy trade in South Asia, we have had two ways of sort of dealing with each other. One is through a bilateral nature, and that is you have an example of Indo-Bhutan hydropower cooperation. You have Indo-Nepal bilateral cooperation. We have recently started exporting electricity to Bangladesh. Similarly, there are positive but very scarce signs of multilateral cooperation on energy issues emerging. In November, during the Kathmandu SAARC summit, the countries of SAARC region, they signed a SAARC energy agreement, and recently a draft deal, BIMSTEC regional electricity grid network deal was concluded in Dhaka. But overall, if you look at the pattern in the last 40 to 50 years, you can see that there is a preference for bilateralism. We have always preferred to deal, we have preferred to engage with our neighboring countries at a bilateral mode. The underlying causes may be possibly related to geopolitical issues, political issues, security-related issues, which I would be dealing. A classic example is the gas pipeline project. You've had like 3 gas pipeline projects which we have been talking about, the Iran-Pakistan project, the Myanmar-Bangladesh-India gas pipeline project. None of them has sort of realized because of the slow pace of negotiations, the political intricacies involved in the negotiation. And if you look at the political issues that affect Indo-Myanmar electricity cooperation, it is like one of the foremost challenges that I can see is the changing nature of bilateral relations. Today we are in a state of condition where we have good relations with Myanmar, but that is vulnerable to change. That is vulnerable to geopolitical change in the neighborhood. I think my previous speaker might have forgot to mention that when we talk about Indo-Myanmar electricity cooperation, we are also talking about bringing Bangladesh on board. So we are essentially talking about India, Bangladesh, Myanmar electricity cooperation, because there are 2 ways of importing electricity from Myanmar. One is through the bilateral mode, wherein you can route the electricity grids from northeastern states of India. The second way is to take a more shorter route, which will go through Bangladesh. If you look at the nature of bilateral relations, it has been changing. With Myanmar, we have essentially had very good relations, but in the post-1980s, we've had not so very good relations. But now you see that the relations have made some positive headway. Similarly, if you look at India's bilateral relations with Bangladesh, it is susceptible to change. It depends on which party is in government in Bangladesh. So if you have an Awami League-led government in Bangladesh, you see visible signs of cooperation. You see greater speeding of economic projects. Whereas when you look at the Khalida Zia-led government, you have seen a very slow pace of negotiations on economic issues. The Tata Steel plant is a classic example where the BNP Jamaat coalition prevented a very economically sound project. One thing which I noticed, one pattern that I noticed in overall South Asian region is the disruptive nature of oppositional politics and community-based activism in some of the supplier and transit countries. For example, you've seen the Mitson Dam dam issue that came up in Myanmar. You can see a similar community-based activism on the Salween Dam project, where the Myanmarese diaspora in Thailand has vociferously opposed the dam project. Similarly, if you look at Nepal and Bhutan, Bhutan has presented a more positive picture, but when you look at Nepal, the oppositional politics has not really allowed the fructification of certain hydropower projects. If you look at the Mahakali Treaty and you look at the Pancheshwar multi-purpose project, you look at the Arun 3 project, you have seen that it has become susceptible to oppositional politics. Similarly, if you look at when you look at 2006, when Bangladesh there were signs that Bangladesh might probably export its domestic gas to India. You saw that the ruling government, which is in power now, Awami League, filed petitions against this proposition. So, and another factor which comes out, I think, which Mr. Venkat Ramani has already elaborated, is that the possible economic corridors, the possible energy corridors are infested with security problems. If you do it a bilateral way, if you take the electricity from Northeast, you have insurgent groups sitting in the Sagaing division, in the Chin state, in the Rakhine region. If you want to import electricity via Bangladesh, you have the Moheshkhali hub from which the electricity grids have to pass through. Moheshkhali hub is very close to the Cox's Bazar, which is again infested with radical elements. But apart from the pessimistic picture that I presented, in the last 1 year, I see a wave of optimism in terms of regional energy integration. And you can see an emergence of cooperating partners in South Asia. You have a visible shift towards regional energy integration. I think the Motors Vehicle Agreement, which was recently concluded, the SAARC Energy Agreement, the BIMSTEC Regional Electricity Grid, is an indication that countries are in a position, they are willing to cooperate at a multilateral level. And the foreign policy is more driven is more driven by economic agenda rather than security interests. I think the Modi government today is consciously cultivating willing partners within South Asia. You can see a continuity in the Manmohan doctrine, Manmohan Singh doctrine, which emphasizes vehemently on economic engagement with its South Asian neighbors. If you look at the status of bilateral relations, you can see a visible improvement. Even during Prime Minister Modi's visit, you saw Khalida Zia and Narendra Modi meeting. You have seen that much of the grievances that Bangladesh had related to reduction of tariff and non-tariff barriers regarding transit access via India have been addressed by India. And you can see visible signs of political cooperation between India and Myanmar. You have seen a greater economic engagement coming through between all the three countries. With Bangladesh and Myanmar as well, you can see visible signs of cooperation. I think Bangladesh has recently proposed importing gas from Myanmar, and in return it would be exporting electricity to Myanmar at a short-term level. If you look, I'll just run through this because I think a lot of things have already been said in the previous sessions. But I will touch upon 3 or 4 factors. There has been a positive turn of political development in Myanmar. Stable government at the center. There is a political reconciliation process that is taking place. You have former ethnic groups who are ready to engage with the central government in Myanmar. And the political, social and economic reforms are taking at a breathtaking speed in Myanmar. And I think if you look at Bangladesh, we can see that with the advent of Sheikh Hasina coming to power in Bangladesh, you can see visible signs of cooperation. She has addressed one note of contention between India and Bangladesh was the hosting of Northeast insurgents and the hosting of radical elements within Bangladesh. With the coming of Sheikh Hasina to power, we have seen the systematic dilution of some of the radical elements in Bangladesh's polity. And with the security cooperation being enhanced, with our security concerns being addressed, I think we are going all out with Bangladesh on economic cooperation. There is an increasing political willingness among all the political parties within Bangladesh to work with India. But the current internal political stability would still remain a cause of worry. The house arrest of Khaleda Zia may have not augured well with some of the international companies. I think companies would, at this stage, would find it extremely difficult to invest in Bangladesh, considering the kind of internal political instability that Bangladesh is witnessing. I have a few suggestions. Looking at the Bhutanese model, looking at the Nepalese model, and the Myanmarese model. I will be borrowing some of the things that Mr. Venkatramani has already said, is to remain sensitive to the local community needs. Hydropower projects can lead to large-scale displacement of people. It is extremely essential that we understand what is at stake, what is the requirement of the people. I think that's where China faltered, and I think India should be extra cautious. But I think to that extent, India and Myanmar have been extremely mature in the way they have handled the hydropower projects. If you look at the Tamanti hydropower project or the Shwezai power project, a detailed economic and social impact assessment was conducted, and the assessment came out, painted a negative picture, and India respected that perhaps it is not the right time to move ahead with this project. So I think India has an upper advantage in this regard, and I think we should sustain the momentum. Another thing which is very essential is, which my previous speaker has also spoken about, is that considering the changing political stability, the changing nature of political relations in the region, it would be essential to ensure that all the commitments pertaining to energy project, economic trade are honored. And the best way to bind these countries together would be to sign a treaty, either sign an energy charter treaty, which ensures that the countries provide national level treatment to all projects of cross-border nature, whether it is a Bangladeshi project, whether it is a Myanmari project. All the countries will have to honor their energy commitments. They will have to honor their trade commitments despite the political changes. This has been vehemently proposed by energy analysts like Shebanti Ray Dadwal. Another thing which I feel is important is the time factor. I think if you look at as Mr. Somint has already said, the sad story of Myanmar, Bangladesh, India gas pipeline project, you've seen that there was a lot of impatience within all the three countries. I think the energy projects in South Asia are cannot follow the European model, where you have a viable business model and you just invest in a project and you start it within a couple of years. It's a painstaking process, unfortunately, in South Asia, but I think we will have to evolve. We will have to learn to sort of cultivate patience so that projects of long-term nature can be realized. With that note, I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
For the electric power generation projects. In fact, with Myanmar, we have already been talking about possible cooperation in the two projects that has just been mentioned by Sanket, okay? We're talking about Tamanti, about 1,200 megawatt. We're talking about Shwezai, about 600 megawatt. But unfortunately, these are being shelved. In fact, as Sanket correctly pointed out, it is the political will that will make things happen. Without the political will, either the buyer country or the seller country, things would not move at all. But with Myanmar, as Myanmar is already committed in the Greater Mekong Sub-Region Economic Cooperation Program, Myanmar has already signed intergovernmental agreement for power trading. And also at the working level, we have signed the RPTA, which the Regional Power Trade Agreement. And lately, we have 3 countries, a tripartite agreement to implement a hydropower project which is called Mainto in Myanmar. So things are moving in other neighbors. It is the, as I said, it's the political will, and I hope the will of the government, 2 governments, will eventually change to be able to materialize a cooperation program in the electric power sector. Of course, you will have so many questions, but as I said earlier, we'll move it to the later part of the section, okay? And for this presentation, let us give a big hand to Dr. Hippu and Mr. Sanket. Okay?